So surely I closed the door of my room. I opened the Gospel of John, which I read before, started reading. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then it comes to the place when it says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw His glory. And I don't know what happened at that moment. Something happened. Like, I literally had that encounter with God. I felt that there was such a sense of revelation or understanding of what I was reading. Before I was reading, I was understanding to some level, but that was mysterious. But in that moment, something happened. My eyes were open, and I heard God say to me, "I'm your Father."
Hi guys, welcome back to Raw Mission. And if you're joining us for the first time, so good to have you with us. I'm Matt, your host for this podcast, and I'm delighted today to introduce you to my first Arab guest, a Palestinian sister we're calling Noor. She grew up in the Middle East in a Muslim family, became a follower of Jesus, and then had to escape a difficult and dangerous situation. She then came to the UK, studied theology, became a church pastor, and now is hoping to return to the Muslim majority world to make disciples and plant churches. Well, it's a joy for me today to have Noor on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Noor.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. We've met a couple of times, but I'm just so looking forward to hearing what God's been doing in your life and your family and your ministry and so on. So yeah, let's go back and tell me, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I'd love that. So I'm Palestinian, but I was born and bred in the Gulf for a large Sunni family, just like a normal kid going to school. But a big part of my education was studying Quran and Islam, as well as other topics. Yeah, so I just had the normal upbringing.
Did you, when you went to study the Quran and so on, was that in the home or in the mosque or at school? How did that work?
It was actually in the school as part of our curriculum. We did Islam and Arabic language, and Arabic language involved a lot of learning some of the passages in Quran and, of course, memorizing some of that. So yeah, I would not say I was a scholar by any means, but I did have kind of basic knowledge of the basic principles of what Islam is about, really, and what Quran is about, and Hadith and all other things.
And what about your family? Were they quite serious in terms of their faith? Did they practice quite a lot? Did they pray 5 times a day and so on, both mum and dad?
Not necessarily, but they were very religious ideologically. So they adopted a lot of that thinking. As Palestinians, the whole Arab-Israeli conflict did definitely affect the way we see the world. So we were a lot for jihad and all of that. But my parents were not necessarily keeping the 5 times of prayer and also like other things. But we kept Ramadan. We prayed often. We were quite connected in that way.
What about brothers and sisters? Did you have a large family?
Yeah. So there are 8 of us. I'm number 7. Some of them are very religious. It's a mixture. Some of them have very liberal view of Islam. Others are like adopting some new age theology at the minute. So yeah, it's quite mixed.
Okay. And where you grew up in the Gulf, did you interact with different people from different cultural backgrounds, faith backgrounds, or was it very much everyone you knew was Sunni and Muslim?
So we did not talk much about these things, like forbidden to just think about these things, although I always had interest about other faith. But in our neighborhood, there were lots of Hindus, interestingly. I mean, I met one Christian growing up. They were Coptic Christians. They never spoke about Jesus or anything. And I met them twice through my sister. Other than that, I was surprised to discover that my best friend actually was from the second largest sect in Islam, which is Shia. And we had such a bad negative view of Shia. So that was a very big surprise.
Interesting. Was she keeping that from you because the Shia were in the minority in that country? She was a bit afraid of your reaction?
I wonder. I think there is that, definitely. Maybe she was not very much strong in her identity as a Shia, but as well, it was that if you are a bit different, you're not welcomed. So maybe she, as a teenager, she felt like she needs to hide that part of her identity. And as well, there was a lot of negative view about Shia in how I grew up. Like my school, for instance, can I give you an example? When 11 September happened, my teachers are the most beautiful, amazing, kind teachers. But when 11 September happened, and like next morning, I saw that my Islamic religion study teacher, she took the mic and she started doing takbir.
Explain what takbir is to everyone.
Allahu Akbar, which is like a sign of victory. And it was shocking because for me, as a Muslim, I found 11 September appalling. I did not like it. I felt something was wrong. It felt sad. I was crying when I saw it on TV. It was shocking. But for my teacher, who was the sweetest person, like honestly, she was amazing. But she thought of it as a victorious. So that was my environment. It was quite a hobby, very strict Sunni.
Okay.
So I can imagine why my friend would never mention that.
Yes, I understand a little bit of the Pakistan context, and there often Shia will feel under persecution. They are often considered not real Muslims or not even true Muslims at all by the Sunni majority there. And so they would usually keep it pretty quiet. And then unfortunately, much as the Christians have some persecution and attacks on their churches, so also the Shia mosques are often attacked certainly in some parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. So yeah, I can fully understand why somebody would be quite nervous as a minority Shia to reveal that. But eventually she did tell you. So what happened after that?
So when I found out, they gave me a book. The book was about a Sunni who converted and became a Shia. And in that book, he listed all the reasons behind it. So it was a very much research-based book. He was bringing all the evidence from all the books that I grew up knowing, like Bukhari, Muslim, commentaries of Quran, and he was just listing all the reasons. But his main research area was the era after the Prophet of Islam. When he died, what happened? And the conflict among his disciples and his friends with Ahlul Bayt, which is the household of the Prophet. And if you read that era, it's a very difficult to read. Growing up, I was told all these romantic stories about all the Khalifas. And I was like, I wish I lived in that era. It was like amazing. Yes. I mean, these are the ones who were promised Al-Jannah, promised paradise because of the lifestyle they led. They were courageous men, which is in some ways true. But there was a lot of blood, a lot of fight for power. And that it felt like we received a filtered story.
Yes, and you're talking about the Khalifa, just for our listeners, probably haven't heard that phrase before, but they would be the early leaders of Islam following the death of the Prophet. Is that right?
Yeah, they've taken the lead after the Prophet. And basically, according to Shia, it was his cousin that was handed the leadership. But then one of the Prophet's wives, the latest one, she basically did a war with the cousin. So her dad would be the next one in line, which was what happened. Okay. Abu Bakr took over.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So this is where Sunni and Shia divide, isn't it? Should it be Ali and Hussein and those kind of relatives of the Prophet, or should it be Abu Bakr who did take over? Who was he the top general of the Prophet, or just a leader in the community?
We were told that he was his best friend. Yes. But again, as well, lots of the stories, you need to know that the history was filtered through a lot of, they say the victorious one write history. So in a sense, a lot of the stories were refined. And I think understanding that era is so important because a lot of the recent current day conflicts are the extension of this conflict. What we saw in Iraq is a big extension of what was happening back then. So history is repeating itself in a sense. So it was very, very interesting book to read. It was not a Christian book, but it was a big help on my journey.
Yes. What impact did it have on you then to suddenly realize there was all this conflict and disputes and problems and fighting around the succession of the Prophet?
I think I was left with one question. What is the truth? What is the truth? How do we know that we know the truth? And what is the truth? And of course, later on, you can imagine what I felt when I read in the Injil, Jesus saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And to come to that place when you think, oh, the truth is not just a concept, the truth is a person. It was just, it was such a turning point. But we'll come to that later.
Yeah, let's do that. Tell us how this early beginnings of asking what is truth, how did that develop into finding out about Jesus and the scriptures?
So, as a teenager, yes, this is interesting, but it's not as important. There are other more important things. Growing up in a conservative environment, I was so eager to go to university and explore life and freedom and all of that. So that was put on the shelf. However, I had an experience before starting my uni when I had a dream of angels descending. The heaven was open, angels come down. I was in my school, and in that dream, it was announced, God is coming, judgment is coming, God is coming. And I was running in the dream. I was trying to hide. Then I went to my family in the dream and I asked them to help me. And they were like, we can't help you. We need someone to help us. So I shouted in the dream, please, would you give me another chance? I'll try to work on it. And I wake up. That dream was repeated twice. So it was such a wake-up call. And of course, I went to university. I had very difficult experience in university to the point that I dropped my studies. I went into wrong relationships. I had difficulties with friends who betrayed me. I think in university, I was living in that cocoon and safety with my family. And suddenly I was exposed to the world and how broken the world is, literally. And I could not cope. I came back to my home absolutely broken, dealing with lots of mental issues, demonic stuff even, to the point that demonic oppression. And I was trying to run to find any kind of help. And of course, being in a religious family in some sense, my mom would put Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow surah, which we believe it bless and protect you. And she would play that for me all night. Recorder cassette. Yeah. And actually what I saw is my situation go worse and worse and worse. I was reciting all the protection verses, know them by heart, and I will get worse. So I was really in a bad place. And I asked the question, if this is the word of God, why it's not protecting me? So here we go, another question. Why is the truth? And then if Quran is the word of God, why it's not protecting me?
Interesting. Because the Quran, in some circles, yes, it's a means to explore who Allah is or God is. But actually, in practice, in many Muslim societies, it's used more as amulets. You put Quranic verses in an amulet, or you drink Quranic verses, or you play them over and over again. And it's almost like this should be doing something. Yeah, maybe you're understanding it, maybe you're not.
In the Quran, there are three, we call it Al-Mu'awwidat, the three last Quranic surahs. These are the surahs that Muhammad himself recited when he had demonic influence, which is really not very popular story, but it is in the history. So he recited these verses to free himself, and he got freed. And there is a lot of debate. Should we include that in Quran? Should we not include that in Quran? But according to Abdullah bin Masud, it should be included in Quran, and it was. So lots of us as Muslims grew up memorizing these verses and being told, recite these verses for protection, and it will deliver you, it will set you free. That did not happen for me. So I was questioning.
Yeah. And were your family quite worried about you at this point? Were they sending you to imams or other people to get more advice?
No, not really. But as well, a lot of my struggle was internal.
Yeah.
I did not feel I could talk to my family openly about my struggles.
Yeah.
Because some of the struggles I had was a result of me having bad choices and going into wrong relationships that ended up breaking my heart. And, we were not allowed to go into relationships. I did not feel safe to open up to my family about some of my internal struggles. So all of that developed for me to become to have insomnia. So I would not be able to sleep all through the night because of fear. I was afraid Yeah, it was such a difficult place.
Hmm.
Uh,
Gosh, it sounds really tough.
yeah,
Yeah. And what happened next?
yeah, I think I was just watching TV to pass the time. Like, you're not able to sleep. It's dark. It's scary. You don't know
Hmm.
what to do. So I watched TV and I was just flipping the channels and I came across an Arabic Christian channel. And it was actually a guy who was B&B
So
in that channel.
BMB, just for our listeners, would mean a believer from a Muslim background.
Background.
Yeah,
He was
sometimes called MBB as well, Muslim background believer.
Yeah, true. He was just sharing some of his journey, I think. I don't recall exactly what he was sharing, but some of his journey, and he was sharing some of the beauty of Isa and some of the struggles with Islam.
Hmm.
And there was some polemic going on, but some preaching of the gospel. And there was with him that guy who was wearing the Coptic Christian priest thing with a big
Hmm.
cross, and that guy, like he's very famous, Father Zakaria.
Yes,
And
yes.
and I was like, he had all the books. It was quite dramatic, all that drama, all the books, all the Islamic books that I know. Like I know these books. This is the books that we learned in school, Bukhari, Muslim, and they were like opening the books, like look what Islam teach, look what Jesus teach. They were doing a lot of comparison, and I
Hmm.
was like, oh, these are liars. Da 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 da. I was like, just I was like already unhappy with them. But they said something. They said, if you want to talk to people live, you can go to this link. I was like, surely I will. So I went into these chat rooms on a program online, and there were like hundreds of people in these chat rooms discussing matters of faith. I was so naive. I just was with my full name. Here I am with my full name going and just saying, I'm a Muslim. I want to know more. Can you please show me what you were talking about? It's appalling. It's not true. And so I want to know more about Christianity because I always had interest in Isa. I can quickly share a story. When I was 7 years old, I was sitting with my sister, and my sister, like, who was older than me, we were sitting in the front garden, and it was night actually, and I was taught in the school that Isa is alive, because Muslims believe Isa is alive. He's
Hmm.
in heaven. And I remember asking my sister, so where is Isa now? And she was telling me, yeah, he's alive in heaven. She was the person who explained that to me. And I really struggled to understand how can a person be alive all these years? What is he doing up there? And I remember my sister telling me all of this, and I did not sleep that night. I was scared. I was looking at the ceiling, thinking like Isa is looking down at me. Just that idea of a human being in the sky was just not something that I
Hmm.
could process. So yeah, so I was attracted to Isa always. But as well, I was a Muslim and I believed Islam. Yes, I had struggles, but I always thought Islam is right. Some people did not practice Islam well. But that does not mean that Islam is wrong. So that was the journey that I
Sure.
was on.
Hmm. Wow. So you got into these chat rooms that evening, and was that just a one-off, or did you start to regularly do these chat rooms and talk with the guys?
Yeah, I put my family in bed and I go every day. Like I think God is so good. Like God uses all the dark things, even the broken things. Like God used that insomnia somehow to
Hmm.
provide a safe environment. While my family were asleep, I'll be on these chat rooms just listening and chatting. And when
Hmm.
they wake up, I'll just stop. So through the night, I'll just be able to talk to many people, and including B&Bs as well, and listen to lots of stories live and just have that space to discuss.
So you got hold of a Bible online to read, or how did that work?
No, I had a copy of the Bible that was given to me, and I was able to read that.
Yeah, who gave it to you then?
So I had like known a guy that I was talking to who gave me the Bible because he knew that I always wanted to read the Bible.
Hmm.
So I visited England when I was around 11, 12 years old, I think. And in the place we stayed in, there was a New Testament in English in every room. And I always wanted to read that New Testament, but it was in English. When my sister came back after her long studies, she came with an Arabic Bible, a full Bible. And I asked her to give me that Bible to read it.
Wow.
But as I told you, I had interest in faith.
Yeah.
But my sister said to me, you can't read this book. You cannot read it till you are above 18 because it will corrupt your mind.
Wow. Interesting. Even though she brought it back.
Yeah, so the Bible was the forbidden fruit that I wanted. So that person gave me the Bible, but not in a sense of like, I'm a Christian, take the Bible and read it. It was more of a sense of, I knew that you want to read the Bible. Here it is.
Yeah. Wow. And that other person who gave it to you, were they someone who lived in the Gulf nearby you? Were they Muslim?
So they were Muslims and they lived in the Gulf, and we were in a relationship.
Yeah.
And we ended up later on being engaged and all of that. But that relationship sadly broke down. But anyway, it was just a sense of like, I had a physical copy of the Bible, which was really helpful just to engage. I mean, I did have access to Bible online as well. But you need to know as well, some of the websites were blocked.
Oh, yes.
So I had really limitation in what I can read. We're talking about really difficult. Like for some people, it's hard to access materials about faith. I mean, I'm talking about back then in 2006, 2007. So it was difficult to find. So that live chat rooms was really, really helpful.
Yeah. And then, yeah, carry on. What happened next in your story?
So I came to a place where I was no longer a Muslim, very much in love with Jesus. I was like, this man is amazing. I'd like him to be my prophet. He can't be God though. I just cannot understand how can he be God. I mean, I'm very sympathetic. Like I'm really quite happy with Christians, but I just cannot believe. I was preaching the gospel. Adam's story, everything was explained to me. All the prophecies about Isa in the Old Testament was given to me. I mean, it was fascinating. I was listening to lots of B&Bs sharing stories about their faith, but I could not believe. I mean, I had accumulated all this knowledge in my head, leaning toward Christianity, but I was praying, God, please show me the truth. If you are the God of Islam, make me strong in it. If you are somewhere else, please help me, show me where you are. And it felt like if I even want to consider Judaism, I will automatically become Christian because a lot of the Jewish teachings seemed like pointing to Jesus. So there was lots of prophecies about him, which was really interesting to read. I really enjoyed digging deep into that. So to cut the story short, I came to a place where I really was deprived sleep, deprived food, could not live normal life. I was so scared. And I was just in my room, and I came across this person who just shared with me. He was a B&B. And he said to me, you know what? You read the Bible to debate. What about reading the Bible to allow to speak to you? Because it's the word of God. I was like, okay, what should I do? Should I light a fire and dance around it? What should you expect me to do? I was so frustrated at that point. He was like, just read it and allow it to speak to you. So surely I closed the door of my room. I opened the Gospel of John, which I read before, started reading. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then it comes to the place when it says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory. And just, I don't know what happened in that moment. Something happened. Like I literally had that encounter with God. I felt that there was such a sense of revelation or understanding of what I was reading. Before I was reading, I was understanding to some level, but that was mysterious. But in that moment, something happened. My eyes were open. And I heard God saying to me, I'm your father. He did not say to me, Jesus is Lord, but he said to me, I'm your father. That was he said. Very interesting that this is what God chose to speak to me about, that He's my Father. And I remember how I continued to read in the Gospel of John. I was just like, every word was coming out of the pages. This is His Lord. It was such an understanding that came to me that this gospel speaks about the divinity of Christ and why He came.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Because there is, for all of us, a spiritual blindness until revelation comes. And there's something that we can't explain when suddenly our eyes are open and we see something different, or we just know this is it. This is truth. This is everything I've been looking for. Yeah. Wow. That's
And
really
saying that, just to be realistic, that did not mean that all my questions were answered.
Yep.
All my doubts completely disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we journey with Muslims, we need to know it's a very complex journey. But what I'm sure about, what I can tell you after all this time now, looking back, what I had in that encounter was so real. It changed me from within. It was so loud. It was so real experience. The change was dramatic. I remember I was reading, continued reading. I was like crying with peace. And then I had the most weird reaction. I actually went out and I started dancing in the garden. I was just dancing. I was jumping of joy. There was such joy. I was like looking at the stars in the sky, pointing to the stars and saying, now I know who made you. I literally started to shout, now I know who made you. It was so vivid. I often use that expression. It's like I was like living on black and white screen, and now I'm watching HD. Vivid colors. Something happened. Something happened that day.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Wow. Praise God. Okay. And so, yes, there were still questions to be worked through. As for all of us, the discipleship process, still has to continue. But what about your family at this point? Or who did you begin to tell? Did you just start with the chat rooms and start telling people online? How did that work out?
So my family were aware something was happening because I was changing. Like I was told by them, you look different. I even started to look different. Something was happening within me, and I could not just hide what was happening. So I would sometimes just excited by the revelation I will get and the conversation I will have. I will go and feed back to them some of it. Not that I would share publicly, that I'm speaking to people, but I would say, have you heard the story of Adam? I remember like going to my mom and sharing with her the story of Adam, but from that Christian angle rather than the Muslim way of understanding it. So stuff like that, or something like a verse that I'll read in Quran and I'll be challenged by, and I will go to my family and ask them about it. Like, how do you think about this? What do you think that means? Stuff like that. So they were aware that something was happening. Yeah, and by time they found out about the person I was engaged to, they found out about him that he actually was not necessarily a normal Muslim, and they threatened to report him in particular rather than me. So we ended up leaving the country, helped by a church in that region, and came here. It was so difficult. I'm not going to go into the details of how that happened, but it was a long process of prep for it. But eventually it happened very quickly. That it was quite traumatic, the way it happened.
Your family didn't know about this, so suddenly you and the guy had to leave.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up needing to come together officially, and my family knew to some degree that we will probably leave because my dad got ill, and my other members of the family who started to find out about him and me a bit, they were like in that dilemma. They cannot tell dad because he was so ill, and they were worried about him. And in the same time, they could not report us because they wanted to protect dad. So it was such a weird place. We were forced almost to keep quiet, but as well they were forced to keep quiet. And we needed to find a way to go ahead with it. So the best option was for us to leave, really. Could not live anymore in that context. It was so dangerous. I was not welcomed anymore in my family to stay in that, community. When even if I'm not holding these views, are sympathetic toward these views, to be with a person who hold these views in their opinion. So it was very complex, and thankfully we had the wisdom of a church that was journeying with us. And I had the wisdom of those online who were discipling me and just putting those breaks into me, because I had so much passion. I was like, I'm going to go and preach to my family. And they were like, are you crazy? Just slow down. You could be killed.
Right.
I had no sense of ability to make decisions. So it was really helpful to have some people around us who were wise to make these decisions for us, or help us competent decisions.
Gosh. So was it hard for you to imagine that you could be in that kind of danger? Because, well, my family love me, my brothers and sisters, we have good relationships. So was it quite hard to believe that anybody would harm you?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
I was like, no, nothing will happen. But actually they did threaten me. They did. They did threaten me. And I knew as well, like, even if they could not do it, they actually could. There is a chance that they would. And I think that was really heartbreaking for me as well. Like back then, like we were hearing stories about people like who would come with us online and then they would disappear. And we will hear that their family found out about them and they killed them or they hid them, or like we heard lots of stories, lots of scary, sad stories. So I knew that it happened. It happened to people and it could happen to me. And I think that feeling of being homeless, and you need to understand, as Middle Eastern, we are very much community wired.
Yes.
We're family wired.
Our family is everything, an extended family. It's your protection. It's your friendship group. It's so important.
It's like, even if you have conflict with my family, which I did, growing up with my dad. So you can imagine when God told me he's my father, it meant a lot of things. Growing up with a very difficult dad, controlling dad. I did not just always enjoy being with my family, with all honesty, but my family were the closest people in my life. So it was such a difficult decision. But and I think what helped me back then was reading in the gospel, Jesus clearly not promising us that everything will be easy. But actually he did say, take up your cross and follow me. I was like, okay, Jesus, you never lied to us. You gave us the reality check in advance. You told us it's going to be difficult, but actually the truth I found in you is worth it. I'm happy to go with you on this journey.
Sharing this podcast is a really good way to encourage more people to get involved with God's great mission, whether locally or globally. So please do help us get the word out there. If you use an iPhone, it's pretty easy to write us a review, and that has a big impact on how many people can find us. Alternatively, you could share one of your favourite episodes with your church family or home group or CU, either in person or on WhatsApp or social media. Thanks, guys, and now let's get back to the podcast.
So there was that excitement of starting a new life when I'm free to be everything I want. I don't need to hide my faith anymore. I don't need to wear a scarf. I just wonder sometimes when I see people wearing scarves, how many of them are believers, but they can't take off the scarf? Right. And it's okay, they don't need to. But in that moment, I wanted to take off my scarf. I wanted to be the Christian publicly, but I could not. So I was excited a bit that I'm going to explore that in my new context. But I was so sad and hurt by the breakdown of relationship in my family.
Yes. Yeah, I can't imagine the pain of just rejection from those closest to you. And then also leaving behind everything you know and that you're familiar with and moving to another country, even though you've got these new freedoms and so on. But those kind of transitions are very daunting, moving into a new big city. And where do I belong? Who do I belong to? Yeah. How did you manage with that? Did you go down the asylum route and get access to this country like that?
Absolutely. So I think I was very naive. I was a very naive girl who grew up in a very close environment. I did not even know the consequences. I thought I'm going to be met with flowers. I'm coming to a Christian country. They will welcome me with Bibles and flowers. Here I am. I was in detention center in Gatwick Airport. I was actually shocked. I did not know I was detained. I wanted to go out. I was like, but this door does not have a handle. Where's the handle of the door? So I was knocking the door. I was like, I'd like to go out, please. And they were like, no, you can't. You are in detention. I was like, what? Can I just at least get my Bible? So they allowed me to get my Bible. I was cold. I was like wearing all these layers. And I came in the summer, but for me, like coming from 50 degrees to 18 degrees, that was a body shock. Yeah, I was shivering. I was cold. I was scared.
Wow. And in the detention center, did you have your friend there, or was it separated?
Yeah. I was with my partner there, and but the thing is, even in that time, I just started to find out things about my partner that was really shocking. There was a completely traumatic experience in every level. Like, even to see that person that you've trusted, that journey of them seeing some of that traces of that trust being broken, and like hidden information that you did not know about that person. And they were supposed to be like your safe space. So that trace of some of that was happening started to open up, like from day one, from us being together, some of that started to unfold through the interviews, that we were asked some questions. And it was shocking to find some stuff about him that I did not know.
Yeah.
And here I am. This is my new family, supposedly. Yeah, it was not in a healthy way. And I was in a new country, new place, not knowing what will await me. We were told that we will be sent back. And I was like, I cannot be sent back. I could be killed if I was sent back. Those who interviewed us, they were doing the job, but they were absolutely unaware at all of what it means for a person from a Muslim background to follow Jesus.
Yeah, gosh, that's so traumatic. So you're dealing with rejection, leaving behind everything you know. You're dealing with betrayal. You're dealing with so much uncertain ahead of you. You're dealing with people looking at you with accusing stares. Is this true? We don't believe you, and trying to probably expose your story and find out if this is a fake way to get into England. And that's so difficult, all those things. I don't know how you managed to get through that. How many weeks or months were you in detention there?
So I did not know how long I would stay. But that night, I had like a vision or a dream. And it was one of like spiritual fathers who were mentoring me online. He was holding my hand and walking with me in like a beautiful garden. And I woke up and I started reading the Bible, and God took me. You remember, I was a very young Christian. So my method of finding God's voice was to open the Bible randomly and just, God, speak to me. That's all I could do. And it was in the book of Exodus. It was that promise of God taking them out to the land of milk and honey. And that God will mightily deliver. So I just looked to my partner and said, this is our Exodus.
Yeah.
We will get out. And actually, within a few hours, we were out.
Wow.
The person who interviewed us completely changed. They brought us a new one. The interpreter was I think she was a Christian. So she was really kind. And then they just told us, we will take you out. And we started this asylum. It was really amazing. I think that was the first crazy way of like God just coming, doing a miracle here on the spot for me in a very risky time, in a very dangerous moment. And I saw his deliverance. It was a moment when I saw the deliverance of the Lord.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that can be months and years of being held in the system. You're unable to go anywhere. You're unable to work, and you move from city to city to city. It can be a terrible experience for asylum seekers in this country. So that really is a big deliverance. Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, we were still in that process of being asylum seekers, but we had the freedom to go around. We did not have the freedom to work, but we did have some courses and improved our English.
Yeah.
Later on, like we granted refugee status and then 5-year residency, and now I'm a British citizen, which is really
Wow.
cool. But it was a journey, and I saw in different stations on that journey the deliverance of the Lord.
Yeah.
Like in the courtroom, when the judge was like smiling at me, it was crazy. It was like he was so compassionate for me. He was listening to me, and I know this is not usual, but the judge was listening to me and he was smiling at me. And then I said, "Can I say something?" And he started to laugh and said, "You don't need to, otherwise I'll change my mind." It was so amazing. Just like, because we were told you will be sent back, your case is very weak. There's 20% that you will be granted a status here in this country. We were told a lot of realistic reports. But God kept telling me what report you want to believe. And the story of Gideon was coming again and again. What report you want to believe. Yeah, that was amazing. So yeah, through that, I came to a place where I was given an opportunity to study like a scholarship in whatever subject I want. And guess what? I studied theology, which was amazing.
Wow, that's brilliant. Gosh, Noor, this is such a powerful testimony. And I also want to bring us forward, though, because I know God's doing lots in you at the moment. So, yeah, did you, after your theology degree, did you move into, were you always in London at this point?
Yes. So for a couple of years, I was in north of England and I was baptized in the north. And then following the calling to study theology and pursuing more maybe contexts where some Arabs are living in the area, because where I was, there were no Arabs at all. Moved to London. And while I was doing my education in theology, I just settled in London and I joined a Black majority Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
And I started to work with them. I was appointed as a pastor with them. And then we started praying about it. They had a heart to reach out to the community. So, yeah, started an Arabic speaking church plant in North London. So
wow.
cool.
How did that go? Were the Arabs in London interested in the gospel as well?
So it was a very difficult experience, but it was an amazing experience. People were listening. Some would say no, some would say yes. Some will believe, some will disappear. That's all part of of ministry among Muslims, if you know what I mean.
Very true.
It was such an amazing thing. I mean, we were intentional. I mean, it was only me who was an Arabic speaker in that context. So it was really hard to mobilize people into believing that, even if you don't speak Arabic, you can do something about it. And the team started to grow gradually. We had few Arabs helping as well. But on a weekly basis, we were intentional on doing evangelism and outreach. And we will share the gospel with people in the street passing by. We had a table with materials. We'll offer the Bible, the gospel, other gospel tracts. And we'll chat to people and just share the good news and offer it. And people will listen. Most of them never heard of that before. Lots of them were refugees. There was a wave of refugees coming to that area from Syria and Iraq in particular.
Okay.
So it was really amazing just to be able to share the gospel with people. And some people will come for more. Some people will come for other practical helps. So we will come and help people practically with needs like food bank or running clinics where people just can come and fill a form with them, go to appointments with them, just practically help them.
Wonderful.
And later on started an English class for people and Bible study and ran al-Masira there. Just al-Masira is like an equivalent of Alpha course that was filmed in the Middle East, and it helps people from a Muslim background to answer the question and to journey with them through the Bible. So yeah, we did lots of things. And after a while, we started to have a weekly Sunday service in Arabic, translated to English. We saw a lot of people hearing the gospel. We saw people being delivered. We saw literally miracles. people getting healed, delivered. So what I've seen in my life, the deliverance of the Lord, I've seen it in people's life, which was really nice. But as well, we've seen people practically being helped just because we were there to help them.
Yep.
We saw people coming for wrong reason, for papers or other things. We saw betrayals.
Yeah.
It was so difficult, but it was amazing. We saw few people getting baptized because they believed in Jesus.
Praise God.
A mother and her daughter, after a while, her daughter believed as well.
Yeah.
Both Egyptian came to faith. That was amazing. So we saw a Yemeni girl coming to faith in Jesus, and she's still with the Lord.
Wow.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, so I'm just saying, we saw people coming to faith. I mean, I expected more people to come to faith, with all honesty. I thought, like, I'm going to change the world. But I was hit by my brokenness, limitations. But as well, the delight of obeying Jesus, and that, we might not see the results we are hoping for, but I would do it again. I don't regret doing it. What an honor it is to obey the Lord. And I think that's when I look back onto that experience, I really felt like it was like walking on water, on the unknown. And by the way, this place is still there. It's still running.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to imagine you also at this, on leadership or on staff at this Black majority Pentecostal church in London. Yet there's so many cultures and mini cultures and subcultures that you're crossing in those interactions. And what were some of the challenges of being, just being you and who you are and your own background and your own, different gifts and so on in that kind of London community? And you've come from such strong levels of community, and sometimes we think the West is very individualistic and not very good at doing community and church. How was it for you?
So it's a very good question. I had that multi-layers issues here. I was a pastor myself, but I was lacking community. I could not feel community in the church because we did not have that as a strong faith. Every church has strengths and weaknesses. Community was not a strong point in that church. They were prayerful. They were so much powerful in terms of praying for people and seeing people delivered and healed and all of that. So that was awesome. There were weaknesses. So since I came to faith, I struggled to see what I felt with my family experienced in the family of God. Sadly, I did not feel a strong community ever till just recently. Maybe that started to just change, but I did not find that. And there was a lot of sadness because of that, because I always felt the church is structured around a Sunday service and activities and programs, rather than truly authentically living together, sharing sadness and hardships and aches and good moments. That did not happen. I tried to create that as much as I can in the church plan, but there was issues. When people come to faith, especially from Muslim background, we come with lots of brokenness. And it takes a lot of time to trust and heal and learn how to forgive and not to hold resentment. So as much as we have strong communities in the Middle East, as much as well we have brokenness in relationships. So it is very much not really deep, and only through Christ, only through receiving forgiveness, I think, from Jesus, then we can really truly forgive one another and experience the fullness of that. Plus, being a leader from a Muslim background and a woman,
yes,
that was not the, let's say, the clear-cut image of what you expect from a leader. A Middle Eastern leader, typical in London and the Middle East, is a man who is very much wearing a suit most of the time, and very polished, well put together.
Yeah.
Yet for me, I was this girl who is from a Muslim background, who was not always, just the typical image.
Yeah.
Who was intentionally sometimes vulnerable and sharing a bit of my issues and my struggle. I was not the clear-cut image of that leadership. And actually, did face challenges from other leaders in the area, sadly.
Wow.
So
Gosh,
that,
I mean, it's so interesting because Noor, I'm sure whether they realized it or not, I'm sure you're an incredible blessing to them in lots of ways. But leadership can be very lonely anyway, I think, as a
yeah,
church leader. You don't know who you can talk to if you've got any struggles, or if you feel that you're disappointed, or if you feel you're disappointing others. It's really difficult. It can be a very lonely place. And I can imagine that was exacerbated for you without, the family and community being more established for you because you were new into London or perhaps new there. Gosh, I mean, these are huge issues. We could have a really
I
good
know,
conversation
yeah.
about this. I've probably told my listeners before, but my wife just finished her master's dissertation on shame and church leadership. And what
Mm,
do church leaders do when they're feeling disappointed or shamed or embarrassed, or, where do they go, and all the expectations of their members and or what church should look like. But I love what you're saying. It's really a good challenge for all of us to think about what is community. It's not just going and doing church on a Sunday together, but how do we live life together somehow? Now, of course, not necessarily everyone's going to live in the same building together all the time, but we really have to think about what is genuine, authentic community that
mm,
speaks to the world around us. I mean, I've got friends who I think they find better community in their Alcoholics Anonymous group than they find in church. And I
mm.
understand that because there's such vulnerability in the AA group where they share all their problems and struggles, and there's grace and there's freedom to do that. And that's really what the church should be. But there's something they found there, community, honesty, vulnerability, that really should be what we're able to get to in church. Maybe not on a Sunday morning, maybe in a small group, home group, or outside just in friendship groups. But it is a really good challenge to all of us, I think.
And I think you are absolutely right. I think if we truly create cultures in the church where we are not judgmental,
Yes.
we are not judgmental, because why there is shame? Why we hide? Because we are worried
Mm,
we will not be accepted.
mm.
It's exactly what Adam did.
Yeah. Hid in
He
the
hid
bushes.
from God,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
It's the first reaction to shame is to hide, and we hide, and we don't open up because we are worried. And I think it can start from the leader. If you are opening up,
Yes.
if you are honest, I mean, there is a wisdom in doing that to some degree. I won't
Sure.
open fully with my congregation as much as I will open maybe. I mean, I'm the same person, but there are degrees of how much I can open to
Definitely.
a
Yeah. You
leader in
can't
my
share
life, or a
everything with the
mentor.
congregation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but one thing that I saw in that, I think I really appreciate my Black brothers and sisters. I've learned so much from them.
Mm.
First of all, my pastor, he really believed in me.
Yeah.
He gave me the mic
Mm-hmm.
when I did not believe in myself. He saw something in me. He empowered me.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe not to the pastoral level that I've expected community-wise, but I was empowered in that church.
Mm.
And I related to their suffering. They had a journey, with discrimination, racism, and a lot of things that I related to.
Yeah.
So in that way, I was really inspired, and I learned so much. I learned from them prayer.
Mm.
I learned discipline and the importance of not quitting and being tenacious in their calling.
Yeah.
Working with Muslims, you can't quit. You need to keep going.
Yes.
So I
Takes
learned so
time.
much in that environment. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for what I've learned.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Definitely.
right. I think as well, my heart is when I share these things is if you are journeying with BNBs, please be aware of that. Be aware of these complexities.
Mm.
If you are hoping to see BNBs empowered and trained for leadership,
Mm.
be aware, be there for them. We all need support anyway, but I think in particular there are some complexities when it comes to believers from a Muslim background. And
Yes.
my heart is to see us really freely running with Jesus, with joy and with obedience and with authenticity.
Yeah.
And truly seeing people coming to faith, and not just coming to faith and stop in their growth, but grow to be flourishing and everything that God called them to be.
Yeah. Great word. Great word. Yeah. to give time, to give listening ears, to give that grace, to struggle when it's a struggle. That's okay. And yeah, really helpful advice for many people, but especially, as you say, for BMBs. Yeah, great word. I don't want to cut this short, but I feel we should probably move forwards again and fast forward towards where are you at now? What's on your heart these days? And what's God stirring in you at the moment?
Yeah, so I work full-time with an organization here in London. So I'm a full-time missionary, and we are working with a team in an area in London. And basically, we mobilize churches. We work with churches to help and support and train and vision churches to reach their communities, especially the least reached group in the communities. And my focus is Islam and Arab, Muslims and Arabs. So yeah, we go to a church and we journey with them. At the minute, I do a lot of ministry on council estates, which really some of them heavily populated with Muslims. And yeah, we do other things too. Actually, what I was surprised by through this journey, yes, when I was doing my church plan, I saw many people who told me they've never heard the gospel before. So I was not completely shocked, because many of those I was talking to were refugees, newly arrivals in the country. But I think since I've started this role, I'm seeing people who've been living here for 20, 30 years, and they never heard the gospel. And actually, our research estimates that 1 in 2 people in London are highly unlikely to hear the gospel. Which is quite a shocking, stat, really.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time doing that, and I really enjoy talking to people and ministering and working with churches in that regard. However, I think my heart is in the Middle East and North Africa. In a sense, it's great to be able to do that here. But the question that keeps coming, or the journey I'm on at the minute, the question that God is putting on my heart is this. Here in London, if you are a seeker, you can go and knock the door of a church and go in. What about the places where it's majorly Muslims?
Right.
99% Muslims. Or a bit less than that. But I mean, we're talking about majorly Muslim nations. Who would be there for them? Who would share with them? Who would talk to them? So I've been really on this journey of discerning, just going back. I'm so burdened for that. I love what Paul said in Romans 15. He said, I was intentional on not going somewhere where the foundation was laid, but to go to places where they've not heard. And then he quotes a prophecy in Isaiah 52. And that prophecy is about a group of people, like people that will hear. Actually, even people will know, their eyes will be open and their ears will hear. And it's amazing. So I was just inspired by that.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, praise God. So are you currently taking active steps to think about, this could happen. I could return to the Middle East or North Africa. And is this something you feel God's calling to you fairly soon?
Yeah. So I'm taking steps and journeying with amazing people, just praying, taking trainings, discerning in how can that practically happen on the ground. And there is a nation on my heart that is I feel like strongly being led to maybe settle there. I'm visiting that nation soon as well, again, as part of discerning again and again. But it's quite clear for me that Noor, that started that church plan thinking that she will change the world, does not think that way anymore. That for me, it's not a one-person thing. It's more of a team thing. So
yes,
I really look forward to work with a team. I really look forward to just pray in places. I don't know what God will do. I was actually asked if I did a risk assessment into all of this calling that I feel going back, being from my background. I think we often see people who are maybe Christians or whatever going, but I haven't heard people who are from Muslim background going back to the Middle East. maybe because of I haven't been exposed to that, but I haven't had many
Mm.
stories about people doing that. So I was a bit of like, am I crazy or something?
You're
And I
not
was like,
crazy. You're not crazy. This is wonderful. I mean, we've been praying for this for several years because we know that
yeah,
Muslims are coming to Christ around the world in the diaspora and so on. And
mm,
yeah, it's been our prayer here in the UK that some will find Jesus and then take your gifts and your skills and your language and use that for the gospel around the world. And you're one of several that I'm so excited to hear about. And
mm,
yeah, we just want to definitely encourage you
yeah,
in that and thank God for that. So yeah, well, you might be a little bit crazy, I guess, but
yeah,
you
little
need to
bit
be a little
like,
bit crazy to follow Jesus.
yeah. So it's really, I'm so excited about that, and I can't wait to explore how does it look like now to live in the Middle East,
Mm.
but not as a Muslim, but as a believer,
Yes.
and not hiding it, but openly.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they, as far as anyone knows, I mean, you could be an Arabic Christian generationally. They don't know if you haven't come from an Arab Christian background or family, which could easily have been from Egypt or Palestine or other places. So, yeah, there's no need for people to ask every single detail about your background, is there? They can just chat to you, and if you want to talk more about your background, you can when you feel led to. It's up to you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there is such an excitement about the heritage the Middle East have when it comes to Christian faith. My heart is go back to your first love. It's not that we are presenting a Western Christianity. We're
No.
actually telling people, by the way, do you know probably our granddads and grandmoms were Christians? Uh,
Yeah.
so it has not been always like Islam has not always been the only
Mhm.
identity or the main
Absolutely.
identity. And
Yeah.
one of the passages that inspires me so much in the book of Isaiah, in chapter 60, which many commentators call the fifth gospel, the book of Isaiah. So chapter 60 speaks about rise and shine, for your light has come, the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. And then it speaks about the darkness that will cover the earth.
Yeah.
The glory of God is on you. So this is a prophecy about the church. But then if you read on, you will find that these tribes coming to Jerusalem, which is like representation of the church again,
Yeah.
on camels, coming, bringing their children on camels and their wealth,
Yeah.
coming to the city of the Lord to
Mm.
be builders in the Lord's kingdom, in the Lord's
Mm.
house.
Mm.
And if you read the tribes, most of these tribes are actually in the Arab world, in the Middle East.
Yes.
And many people, when you read some commentaries about it, they will tell you this did not happen. It's something that will happen to the
Right.
fullness, and it's happening in some sense.
Yeah.
But it's that amazing picture of people coming, not just individually,
Mm.
but that movement thinking as households.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
exciting. Not just
Nations will come. Yeah. Nations will come to your
yeah,
light.
nations
Yeah.
and movement.
Isaiah is full of it, isn't it? Yeah. From the east and the west. And oh, yeah. Beautiful pictures. And of course, the great banquet is in Isaiah, isn't it? That all the
Yeah,
nations sitting together, which again will be fulfilled in all its fullness when Jesus comes back and the new heavens and new earth is
and
inaugurated.
absolutely, and we are part of that. I think the big story is so important. We're not just
Yeah.
going to nations to preach
Mm.
the gospel. We are preaching the gospel, declaring the kingdom of God, and there's this big story.
Yes.
We're part of a bigger story, and it's amazing. And one of the other things that I love is that in the book of Acts as well, we see that one of the languages the Holy Spirit communicated was Arabic.
Mm.
I often, when I speak Arabic, people will think this is the language of Quran. And I actually, before it being the language of Quran, it was one of the languages the Holy Spirit used to communicate
Yes,
the
at
great
Pentecost, was it?
God. Yeah,
Yeah,
Pentecost.
that's
So
right.
I feel like sometimes it's not going to change the people, but actually, no, not really. Let's call out their identity of who they are,
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really good. Yeah, I love that point about the church history in North Africa and the Middle East. Yeah, if you go back to some of the early church fathers were from that area. very much so. There were hundreds of years of churches growing and the gospel spreading all over that area, way before the dawn of Islam. So that's a really good point, and to hold, the looking back in the right way and the looking forward to what God is doing and what that we're part of that much bigger picture from Genesis to Revelation, and that's beautiful. And your story is a wonderful example of that. We're all part of the Gentiles coming in to the kingdom. Thank you so much, Noor, for sharing your story. It's wonderful for our listeners to hear about, an Arabic-speaking sister who's found Jesus from your background. Thank you for giving us your time today, for the wisdom you shared, the story you've shared. We could definitely talk more, but so nice to see you, and thanks.
It's Matt, such a joy to share.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks for being with us today, guys. I want to encourage you now to take a minute just to ask God what role you can play in his mission. Maybe he's calling you to give generously, or maybe to pray for an unreached people group and bring that to the attention of your church. Maybe to have a conversation with your leaders about running a MomentumYes course. And maybe you want to offer yourselves to Jesus right now, to say to him that you're willing to go wherever he calls you, whatever the cost. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Do get in touch with me, matt@frontiers.org.uk. You might have questions about something raised in the episode. You might want to invite me to come speak at your church. You might have ideas for the podcast. Otherwise, do check us out on our website, frontiers.org.uk, and on all social media platforms @FrontiersUK.